on Saturday. Your money at this moment, the Dow is down 508 points, the S&P down 112, and the NASDAQ down 495 points in light of what's going on with the tariff situation. Coming up, more rain and snow still on the way. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time 101.
The sources where we get our news matters.
When you listen to Utah's Morning News, we want you to feel the stories are important to you and trustworthy. This is Amanda Dixon.
And I'm Andy Farnsworth. Join us weekday mornings on KSL News Radio.
This is Derek Overstreet of the New Millennium Group and host of Stop Working and Start Living Radio. If you're close to or in retirement and you don't have a tax plan, call us right now, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Listen, our country's been spending like never before, and the tax bill is coming soon. If you need an income tax strategy and a financial plan that will get you through the rest of your life, give my team a call, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. If you want an investment plan that allows you to keep more of your gains and pay less taxes, give us a call, 888-999-6370. My team specializes in the type of plan that will get you retired 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible. So, get a no-cost tax analysis by calling 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. My team is standing by now.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors, and I'm proud to tell you we don't lay off employees when things get tough. During the pandemic, we didn't let one of our installers go. Instead, we had them clean and remodel our offices so they could still get paid. Remember the 2008 housing crisis? It was a financial nightmare for even the biggest contractors. Still, we didn't lay off a single worker. Nope, we sacrificed profits to keep paying everyone. Look, when the economy's down, most contractors are quick to lay off their workers. It's the easiest way to save money when times get tight. But at RGS Exteriors, we're loyal to our people. You know why? Because it's the right thing to do. People first. People always. That's the RGS way. For gutters, siding, windows, and more, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsexteriors.com. That's rgsexteriors.com, 801-280-3110.
Meanwhile, at Xfinity.
So, influencer life going well?
Oh, yeah. I'm up to 32 followers.
Oh, that's something.
Yeah, posting my tap dancing videos is easier than ever because we engineered Xfinity Internet with 99.99% network reliability.
Plus, Xfinity Mobile with Wi-Fi Power Boost gives you ultra-fast Wi-Fi at home and on the go. But wait, tap dancing? You don't tap dance.
Hey, what I lack in skill, I make up with passion.
Do more of what you love and love how fast you do it with Xfinity Internet and mobile. Through April 21st, get 300 megabit Xfinity Internet and one unlimited mobile line together for $25 a month for 1 year and save over $1,000 in your first year versus other major carriers. Plus, ask how to get iPhone 16e on us. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Requires paperless billing and autopay with stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Equipment tax and fees extra. After promo, regular rates apply. Actual speeds vary. Savings compared to Verizon 5G Internet plus one unlimited welcome line and AT&T Internet 300 plus one unlimited starter SL line. Xfinity Internet required. Actual savings vary.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America's low-rate auto loans. Here's Ricky Meese.
For those traveling northbound I-15 after 6 North, we do have a crash over to the right shoulder. An accident in Davis County, Antelope Drive at Main Street. Restrictions for Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons. Those roads are snow-packed and icy. Advanced Window Products, $2,500 off 10 windows or more. AdvancedWindows.com. Affordable windows guaranteed. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Rain showers today, which could turn into snow showers overnight. The storm should pass before the weekend, though. Saturday, we're expecting sunshine and a high of 46, and Sunday, a high of 54. Right now, it's 42 degrees with light rain. I'm Heather Peterson from the KSL Calm and Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
A new presidency, new state leaders, and a new legislative session. Utah's top political experts discuss the day's biggest stories. Only on KSL News Radio.
The U.S. Department of Education will live to see another day. Reports this morning from Wall Street Journal outlined a draft executive order directing the department's secretary, Linda McMahon, to, quote, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education. Welcome to Inside Sources. I'm your host this afternoon, Greg Skordas, and I'm alongside Morgan Lyon-Cotti, Associate Director of the Hinckley Institute. Morgan, I haven't worked with you before. It's a pleasure to be with you.
No, I think we've been in meetings. You've been on the Hinckley Report, but I don't think we've ever co-hosted, so this will be fun.
You're a wealth of knowledge, so I'm glad you're here because I'm just going through the rundown of the program. It's like, oh, I know about that. Oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that. I know that legislation. So this is going to be a lot of fun. But let's start with the Department of Education. Recently, we were told that there was going to be an executive order to eliminate the Department of Education. As we indicated, that order is now on standby, although there has been some directive from President saying to Secretary McMahon to begin dissolving the department, and the White House has pulled that order to dismantle the office, and there were some concerns about the executive order would impact programs, including the school lunch program. ABC's Alex Prescia has more.
I mean, when you think about the Department of Education, one of its chief functions, I mean, billions of dollars go towards servicing students that are low income, and then also students with disabilities. And so, you know, there was a pivotal question here about how that would either be absorbed by other agencies or how state and local school districts would be able to fill in the gaps there.
Yeah, I guess what I didn't understand, Morgan, is what the Department of Education does. And I think that the notion of the Trump administration maybe doing away with it is maybe the education would be better handled on the state level. But the department itself does quite a bit that I guess I didn't really appreciate.
Yeah, it's always interesting when we have these conversations because you hear that line that people want education to be handled at more of the state or local level, when in reality that is where the vast majority of education policy does come from and is administered.
Sure.
But this often happens. It's not unique at all to this situation where people love the idea of cutting back, making government more efficient. But then we realize what programs they're talking about. And people say, wait a minute, I relied on school lunch. Or wait a minute, I had a school loan. Or wait a minute, my neighbors go to a Title I school.
Right.
So I think that's where the rubber's hitting the road here.
Here's a little bit more from Alex Prescia.
What the EO, as we've been briefed on, advises Linda McMahon to do is to roll back as much as she can by law. And so whenever you look at that, maybe it becomes a piecemeal function of dismantling parts of the agency. Keep in mind, it's not just those billions of dollars that go towards low income and also students with disabilities. The Department of Education also oversees a $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. It also oversees FAFSA.
Trump has long had the Department of Education in his crosshairs, I think, Morgan. And if you recall, there was some concern, I guess concern is an understatement, about what Biden was trying to do. And he did it twice with student loan forgiveness. I mean, it was just a really bungled program that he tried to set up because really that's something for Congress to deal with. Of course, that plays for Trump as well, but also the expansion of anti-discrimination rules to transgender students. Trump promised to make that a big part of his decision once he got into office. And let's just play one more soundbite from Alex Prescia.
Even if Linda McMahon, the Department of Education secretary, wants to follow through, in order to dissolve this agency, he needs an act of Congress, and they need 60 votes. They need Democrats to be on board with this. And frankly, there is no Democratic support that we're aware of right now.
60 votes because of the filibuster. I mean, so in a sense, it ain't going to happen.
No, and I think this is one thing a lot of even Republicans are wondering about is why are we using so many executive orders? The president has a majority in both chambers, but he doesn't have a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. And I think that's why President Trump likes to think of himself as a businessman, a man of action. He wants to get things done, and he's made it really clear he's not going to try to wrangle all of these Democrats and these even Senate Republicans. He's going to get through it.
But it does seem that the Senate Republicans and the House Republicans are largely behind him. I mean, maybe universally. I mean, he's having a very hard time. Now, he's got the majority. He just doesn't have the majority that he needs. But Congress is lining up pretty hard behind him in a way that they don't need to, because, and let's face it, they deal with the budget, they deal with monetary issues, and they could easily stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, this is not going to happen. But they don't seem to be wanting to do that with a lot of these executive orders.
No. Well, I heard just some analysis the other day, and it should be much more obvious. But for my brain, I don't know. It really hit me that the party of the presidency really takes on that president's personality. And I think it hadn't hit me in the past because the swings were so much more subtle. To be an Obama Democrat was not all that different from being a Democrat.
Right.
Same with a Reagan Republican to a Bush Republican. But to be a Trump Republican is something very different. And to stand up to Trump means you're also standing up to that constituency, that primary constituency. And these members of Congress who have another election in a year and a half, they're doing that math and realizing this might be a pretty painful situation.
I've been thinking that same thing, but I've been also thinking about this, Morgan. There's got to be some members of Congress, both in the House and the Senate, that aren't running for office in 2 years or 4 years or 6 years. Some that are maybe done. And you would expect that there would be some break in the ranks from those that are saying, look, Elon and Donald, you're not going to be able to mess up my election in 2 years because I'm not going to have an election. But we haven't seen that break. And I don't know that everybody's going to run again, but I was just surprised at that.
I don't think we've seen that break because we're not seeing as much of a reaction from the public as we did in 2017 with the Women's March and mass demonstrations and people already talking about the midterms. We're just not seeing that. It's a lot quieter. We are seeing some demonstrations, but not to that level. So they may be looking at their districts or their states and realizing, I don't know if there's the pushback to Trump there. So why would I push back? And one thing many people have noted is there's not a John McCain, there's not a Mitt Romney, there's not a Liz Cheney, there's not these high-profile Republicans that they can get behind. There's not one already existing. One of them, someone will come out.
Right.
Within the next year or two. We're just not there yet.
It also seems like there's been a push by conservatives to tell Democrats and independents that, hey, I know it's a lot is happening right now, but this is part of the plan. Let's write it out. Let's see how it works. And I've heard that a lot with people who are in just shock about what's happening with all these executive orders, and others saying let's see how this shakes out before we all get too upset about it. And a lot of people are really upset about it already, so maybe we're past that. But even some Democrats are being told, back off a little bit. Let the president run his agenda, all the things he promised that he was going to do when he ran, and let's see how that works out.
Yeah, and I think there is this idea that he is the person that was elected. We saw last night there are some people that think it was a mandate and some people who didn't think it was a mandate. But he's the one in office. Republicans have both chambers. There is this idea of, maybe we should let them try to have a go at it because that's what the American people said they wanted.
That's right. Well, the Department of Education is going to be around again for a little while, although there's going to be some massive cuts. We'll see where that goes. And when we come back after the break on Inside Sources, President Trump is doing another sort of turnaround, and that is he's pausing tariffs on Mexico again. Let's discuss the effects of this back and forth on tariffs happening or not after the break.
Seems everything costs more these days. Gas, groceries, and when's the last time you checked your wireless bill? Yikes. When it comes to Big Wireless, if you're staying, you may be overpaying. Here's how to get the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage without the big wireless bill. Switch to Consumer Cellular. Plans start at just $20 a month, and that's not a short-term promo. Our U.S.-based experts will get you switched and saving in about 20 minutes. Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com and start saving today. Plans include $5 credit for auto pay and e-billing.
When you switch to Progressive, you could save bundling your home and auto. Then you could put that money towards some of the surprisingly more expensive things in life.
May I help you? I just wanted to request a late checkout, please.
Of course. That's $30 per hour for up to 4 hours.
Huh. Okay, but if you can offer a late checkout, then that probably means no one is staying in that room. So if it's empty, maybe I can just stay a few extra hours.
Oh, aren't you adorable?
Life costs a lot, so bundle and you could save with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Not available in all states.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Is your mom or dad struggling to get in and out of their chair? Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent with Alpine Home Medical. We've seen it happen for years. As customers come into our store and they've had a recent fall, they're finally ready to ask for some help. Don't wait until you're injured. We have everything you need to avoid the fall before it happens. Now until the end of February, we're running a deal that we think you're going to love. When you purchase a lift chair, you can unlock 10% off your entire purchase. Get side tables, canes, shower chairs, walkers, and even ramps. We're open Monday through Friday. We've got stores from Idaho Falls to St. George and now in Tooele. Come into any one of our 11 locations and let us help you. Find us online at alpinehomemedical.com.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Seems everything costs more these days. Gas, groceries, and when's the last time you checked your wireless bill? Yikes. When it comes to big wireless, if you're staying, you may be overpaying. Here's how to get the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage without the big wireless bill. Switch to Consumer Cellular. Plans start at just $20 a month, and that's not a short-term promo. Our US-based experts will get you switched and saving in about 20 minutes. Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com and start saving today. Plans include $5 credit for auto pay and e-billing.
Ready to order?
Yes. We're earning unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with a Capital One Saver card, so let's just get one of everything.
Everything?
Fire everything! The Capital One Saver card is at table 27 and they're earning unlimited 3% cash back.
Yes, Chef! This is so nice.
Had a feeling you'd want 3% cash back on dessert.
Ooh, tiramisu!
Earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Do you need new windows? Look, all glass pretty much looks the same to the naked eye, but if your windows aren't triple-coated, argon-filled and sealed double-pane glass, the cold is seeping in. You need to call Advanced Window Products. They use the highest quality glass and premium vinyl to create state-of-the-art windows and frames, and for 38 years, they build those frames right here in Utah. Custom crafted for Utah's climate. The best windows you can buy at prices 30 and 40% less than what the big companies charge because they cut out the middleman. They're the factory. They even give you a lifetime warranty, and right now as we head into spring, save an extra $2,500 off 10 windows or more. Custom windows that'll give your house a fresh new look and save you money on your heating and air conditioning. Advanced Windows offers 60-month 0% financing, even buy now, pay later, and an extra $2,500 off. Call for a quote. 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or go to advancedwindows.com.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm energized by breaking news. First of all, because it's right now, and second of all, because in many cases the audience needs to know. There's no more important service that we can provide, and I find it critically important to get more details to the audience as quickly as possible. There's nothing more energizing than that for me. Not at all. The most important thing we do is breaking news. I am gratified that so many people listen to me every afternoon on KSL, but what they don't know is that there are so many people behind the scenes making it happen, checking on the traffic, answering the phones, making the calls, talking to the newsmakers. They're out in the street, into the field to get the raw information, and then putting it all together so that I can sit in front of a microphone and be a source of information every afternoon. But there are so many people who make it happen. That's what you don't know.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
If it feels like deja vu, you're not alone. Today, President Trump announced another month-long pause in the implementation of tariffs on Mexico. The U.S. Commerce Secretary says it's likely that tariff relief will come to both of our neighbors, that is, Canada and Mexico, though right now the pause only affects Mexico. The back and forth of it hasn't been good for the stock market, which relies on stability. And I'm watching the stock market right now, Morgan, and it's all three are way down, way down, which I thought was in response to the tariffs. But the tariffs, at least with Mexico, have been lifted, but the stock market is still not very happy right now.
Yeah, well, as you said, the stock market relies on stability. So that change back to it doesn't necessarily make investors think that more changes into the very near future.
Let's get an update from ABC News on the tariffs.
President Trump writes on social media he's pausing tariffs on Mexico for any goods that fall under the U.S. Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement, a temporary reprieve that he says will only go until April 2nd, at which point reciprocal tariffs will go into effect. It's not clear what additional tariffs Mexico and Canada could face as a result of that next round. The announcement comes after President Trump spoke by phone with Mexico's President Sheinbaum. The president writes on social media their relationship has been, quote, a very good one, and they're working hard together on migration and fentanyl. Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
So if you recall what happened, we had this, the tariffs were going to be imposed the first week of February. It got right down to it. They were imposed maybe for a day or two. Both countries came to the fore. Trump gave them a reprieve. He said, we're going to reinstate them, but we're going to at least withdraw the tariffs, but reinstate them on March 4th, which was Tuesday of this week, if those countries didn't get in line. They apparently didn't, to his satisfaction, and they were reimposed. But here we are a day or two later withdrawing them, at least as it relates to Mexico. And it's uncertain what's going to happen with Canada, because there are some reports that say he's going to withdraw them on Canada, but he hasn't quite said that yet.
Yeah, this is really interesting. President Trump has talked, and this goes back the entire 10 years he's been a presidential candidate, been president, and now president again. He hates trade deficits. And when he typically talks about tariffs, he's talking about American jobs and American manufacturing. But what has been really interesting with these conversations over the last month is talking about tariffs as a negotiating tool, which isn't that uncommon. We use tariffs in diplomacy throughout history, but I don't know if we've ever seen them used in this quick action way, or at least not a time that really comes to mind for me. And I think that's what's causing some of the instability and some of the questions, both from the market and from citizens.
Yeah, and it goes without saying that the importation of fentanyl into this country has been a scourge. I mean, it's a drug. Just in my 43 years of practicing law, it's a drug that's taken over in ways that I never have seen before. I mean, you remember the meth labs and the big push toward meth, what was that, like 20 years ago? That was a big deal. But this fentanyl craze is nuts, and it's being manufactured in Mexico. And Trump has put these tariffs on not only to cease the inflow of illegal immigrants from the southern border, but to cease the inflow of fentanyl too. And to some extent, the country of Mexico has done a pretty good job on both levels, it seems.
Yeah, it seems like them and their new president was, I believe, either elected or inaugurated a month before Trump was elected, and this was a priority for her as well. It has, from many reports, has really cracked down, especially in certain regions of Mexico. And it is really interesting. It's not like, as you were saying, it's not like heroin or some of these other things where we're thinking about fields and growing. It is more like the meth. People make this in their homes and put it in pill bottles, and they have proven to be just tragically efficient at it. But this crackdown, it does seem to be satisfying a lot of what President Trump was demanding of the country.
You know, and you wonder, because it can be manufactured in the home. I mean, people can manufacture fentanyl. And I was wondering, well, why aren't people just doing it here in the States? And I think it's because the precursor drugs, the things that you need to put that together, are just not available here. And they are available in Mexico and other countries. So, the meth lab thing was just go buy some, different chemicals that you could, what was it that you could buy?
I don't know. I didn't watch enough Breaking Bad. I don't know.
Yeah, right, exactly. But yeah, you could buy some over-the-counter cold medication, and that was sort of a precursor, and get a few other things, and hope you don't blow up your house in the meantime. That was an interesting series, by the way.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad. But fentanyl, I guess it requires much more. And, fentanyl is also a really insidious drug, because I don't know why it is, but it's so much more powerful than the oxys, than the other opioids that it's been replacing, and it's marketable, obviously, and it's manufacturable. I don't know if that's a word, but people are able to put it together, and it's become something that's quite the commodity.
Well, and it's building off of that oxy and the scourge of meth, heroin, and then just the addiction to opioids that we've seen, the epidemic that we saw in our country, which is something that Vice President Vance has spoken a lot about, being from Appalachia. His book, Hillbilly Elegy, has just been a major theme, and part of his rise to prominence, one of those issues, and we just see how it has built. So it shouldn't be surprising that our leaders are so focused on it. And it's been just really interesting because it's clearly not a domestic issue. It's something where we need our international partners to work on it. But we also have the issue of tariffs where it doesn't always seem like we're working together. We're punishing each other at the same time.
So let me ask you this. If we feel like tariffs are working, at least for what Trump is trying to do. So he imposes this tariff threat in February. The countries, Mexico and Canada, do what they need to do to satisfy him, at least for the time being, and he says, okay, I'll give you a 30-day reprieve. He then imposes them again, and you're right, the stock market's going crazy. But he's also limited that. I mean, we're coming back now on what, April 2nd, Trump wrote, and he said, I did this as an accommodation and out of respect for President Sheinbaum. Our relationship has been a very good one, and we are working hard together on the border, both in terms of stopping illegal aliens from entering the United States and likewise stopping fentanyl. So he must feel, Morgan, that there's enough being done to give him a reprieve, but he's also keeping his foot to the pedal. And maybe the stock market, be damned. We'll see what happens. But maybe he feels like he has to follow through on his threats.
Perhaps, and President Trump has shown himself to be someone that doesn't like to back down. But he's also someone who watches that market and who listens, is very aware when people start caring about the economy. And you have states, if I'm not mistaken, like Arizona and Texas and California, where some of their biggest trading partners are Mexico. And then most states, their biggest trading partner, their biggest exporter, their first or second or third on the list is Canada.
Yeah, you were talking about that. You saw a study or something that sort of described that.
I met with an interesting Canadian delegation earlier in the week, and they were really focused on this. And my first job I used to work in the governor's office of planning and budget, where I would help prepare the economic report to the governor. And it was the same line every year. One of our biggest exporters, Rio Tinto and others rely on them, is Great Britain, is Canada, these important countries to us. And one of the things that one of these Canadian delegates told us was that 2 provinces in Canada are the biggest alcohol purchasers in the world because it has a monopoly and the province is purchasing it. And I just had that line from Hamilton, just see what happens when you try and tax our whiskey. So how is Tennessee and Kentucky feeling about sending, they're not able to send their whiskey to Canada because people are protesting and people don't want to buy those American products.
Yeah, I don't understand this, and I don't expect that you'll have the answer, but necessarily, but I can understand, there's so much fentanyl coming from Mexico, so many illegals coming in from Mexico. We don't see the same of either level from Canada. I mean, the amount of fentanyl coming in from Canada is like a couple of percentages of what's coming in from Mexico. So I guess I don't understand why Trump is imposing tariffs on Canada in the way that he is, or what leverage he's hoping to get because of what you just said. They're a huge trading partner.
Well, but for me, that's when it comes to that idea of the trade deficit, which President Trump just hates. He wants these jobs in America. He wants these parts made in America. We saw the big 3 automakers come out this week and say, hey, we actually trade. We make something, they make something, it all turns into one car. We need you to back off. But he wants all of that to be made in America and those jobs to be American.
Yeah, we think of the auto industry and others as being so much a part of Canada and the United States, almost being a team. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at anytime you buy a car, you can see parts were made here, parts were made there. But I mean, the northern border of the United States and the southern border of Canada have so many manufacturing facilities that are almost one and the same that you wonder what's being gained here. We'll see how that goes. We have a reprieve until April 2nd, at least as it relates to Mexico. When we come back after the break, let's take our conversation to Utah's Capitol Hill. There's one more day left in the session. I can't believe that. And plenty to still talk about. We'll be right back.
Good afternoon. It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Maria Shilaos. KSL's top local story this half hour. SR 92 in Provo Canyon is closed. The North Fork Fire Department says there are at least 2 cars in the river. They say at this time no one will be able to pass. Utah Highway Patrol says the plows are unable to get through. Multiple outlets are now reporting President Trump has postponed tariffs on some goods from Canada, now in addition to the Mexican tariff pause. This is the second one-month postponement Mr. Trump has announced since first unveiling the import taxes in early February. The reprieve would apply to goods that are compliant with the trade agreement that Mr. Trump negotiated with Canada and Mexico in his first term. Lagoon is closing down its zoo. It's been controversial for decades, drawing hundreds of protesters and petitions. Spokesperson Adam Leishman says they've already started working on sending the animals to accredited facilities.
Those animals have been rehomed. They were rehomed a few months ago towards the end of last year after we closed for the 2024 season.
Leishman says the closure isn't because of protesters. He says it's because the park wants to expand certain areas and open new projects. The Utah House has passed a bill that gives eligible students free lunch instead of reduced price lunch. It was passed unanimously in the Senate last night. The House just passed it by a vote of 47 to 24. That bill now heads to the governor's desk for his signature. Taking a look at your money, the market's not liking the uncertainty about tariffs. The Dow is down by 468 points, more than a full percent. S&P 500 down by 104. The NASDAQ, it's down by 2.5%, down 471 points. Coming up, rain turns to snow overnight. We'll check the forecast. Coming up next, KSL News Time, 1:32.
Mornings are for recharging.
And they're for starting your day right.
We volunteer to join you in the car. Get news and weather at 102.7 FM during the most important part of your day.
Andy and Amanda, each morning between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
Get a head start on the warmer months ahead with a $29 AC tune-up from Yes Air Conditioning, Heating, Plumbing, and Electric. Yes offers licensed technicians and an exceptional service guarantee to give you peace of mind and help prevent expensive breakdowns. Ensure your system is working at peak efficiency and help save money on energy costs with a $29 AC tune-up from Yes Air Conditioning, Heating, Plumbing, and Electric. Call now or visit theyesmancan.com for details, terms, and conditions. Just say yes.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Is your financial advisor offering you up to a 30% upfront bonus? Are they promising you up to 10% growth per year guaranteed for your retirement income? If not, you need a new financial advisor. I'm Jeff Jr., founder of Trajan Wealth. If you plan to retire within the next 10 years, don't wait only to find out it's too late. I've seen hard-working folks like you retire only to be required to go back to work, all because their advisor told them guarantees like these were too good to be true. They're not. That's up to $30,000 up front or up to $10,000 per year on $100,000, all guaranteed for retirement income. Don't work when you're supposed to be retired. And if any financial advisor tells you it's too good to be true, they simply don't have the options we do. Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600.
Annuity guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
Traffic and weather together. It's brought to you by Mountain America's low-rate auto loans. Here's Ricky Meese.
Well, for those who are traveling the Valley freeways, very wet road conditions. And as you mentioned, Maria, we do have a road closure, SR 92, the Alpine Loop, Alpine Scenic Highway. It is closed right now, a few miles into that roadway from the Highway 189 Provo Canyon Junction. We've had multiple crashes and slide-offs. The road is blocked both directions. No estimated time as to when it will reopen, but right now we have delays already back to Highway 189. You need
need to plan ahead and avoid this road. Whipple Service Champions, your cooling, heating, plumbing, drains, and electrical specialist. Whipple that away. Ricky Neeson, the KSL Traffic Center.
You can expect the rain and snow showers to continue through a good first half of the day tomorrow. 90% chance today, 60% chance tomorrow. Then the weekend looks dry with a high on Saturday, 46, 54 on Sunday. Right now, 41 degrees, raining in downtown Salt Lake City. I'm Maria Shaleas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
A new presidency, new state leaders, and a new legislative session. Utah's top political experts discuss the day's biggest stories. Only on KSL News Radio.
This is a little bit breaking news, but in our last segment we talked about tariffs, and right now at the White House, Trump is talking about those and talking about the disruption that is putting them aside would cause.
No president did anything about it until I came along, and then I did a lot about it. You know, we took in tariffs from China $600 billion. Nobody else took in 10 cents from China. They never did. But when COVID came along, we had to focus on COVID. We did a great job. We got rid of that. We ended up handing over with a market that was higher than it was previous to COVID coming in. But this is very much about companies and countries that have ripped off this country, our beloved USA, and they're not going to be ripping us off anymore. So, you know, I think that has an impact on the market.
Mr. President, sir, this is a slate of nominees that's been prepared by the Presidential Personnel Office. It includes a number of sub-cabinet level appointments, a number of your ambassadors that have been previously announced, and also, crucially, given the administration's concerted effort to focus on violent crime, it includes a number of U.S. attorneys in major cities that have real crime problems.
Okay. Some very good people, too.
Thank you, sir. And then we have a number of ceremonial proclamations that Lindsay Halligan is going to.
So 2 very special proclamations.
Yeah, so Trump is talking about the tariffs and what he's done and why he's done what he did, and I guess we'll see what happens with that, Morgan. Again, he's pulled back on the tariffs as they relate to Mexico. It's not clear what he's going to do with Canada, and he's given Mexico until April 2nd to get in line, or he will reimpose tariffs. But let's go up on Capitol Hill. There was a bill that was passed in the last session, one of the more controversial bills. It was House Bill 267, which banned public sector labor unions, from being able to collectively bargain with their employees. Now, several of those groups are banding together. If you recall, there was a huge amount of protests with teachers union, firefighters, law enforcement. A bunch of those groups are banding together right now to launch a referendum for the ballot. It's a term that we'll talk about in just a minute, seeking to repeal the bill. If you recall, the bill was passed in both the House and the Senate. It's already been signed by Governor Cox, but since the bill didn't receive the majority, 2/3 of support, it's left open for what's called the referendum path. I wasn't familiar with the referendum path. I guess I'm clear on ballot initiatives, but apparently there's another path that the citizens could take, Morgan, to say, wait a minute, we don't like this legislation, and it's the referendum path.
And it's not surprising that most people aren't familiar with it, because we've only had one in our entire state's history. And the referendum it's the opposite of an initiative.
Right.
It's the citizens saying to the legislature, we really don't like that bill that you just passed, and we are going to gather the signatures. That process still looks the same, and then they vote at it at the next basically midterm or presidential general election. And the only one we've had in our state was in 2007. Off of a school voucher bill, and former Senator Steve Urquhart liked that his claim to fame was he was the only one who'd sponsored a piece of legislation that was then put away with through referendum.
And you're the only person I can think of that would have remembered that, because I was thinking referendum. I don't even recall this ever coming up, but you talked about when it last happened. And so what it requires is that the coalition that is getting together to create this referendum has to gather 141,000 signatures. Now, that must be some statutorily mandated number based on the population or something like that.
Yeah, it's the same as the initiatives. I believe it's 10% of the voter turnout from the last presidential election.
Okay, so 141,000. Apparently, they filed an application that they're going to do that, but it was rejected by the lieutenant governor's office because it was too soon, I think.
Yeah, I think they were interpreting the language, as I understand it, it's 5 days after. They were thinking it could be filed anytime 5 days after the bill was passed and signed, but the lieutenant governor said, no, it's 5 days after the session ends. So no matter what, we're going to see it in the next week.
So what I didn't understand is this. I thought that the gathering of the signatures was enough, but apparently the gathering of the signatures means that the referendum will be on the ballot.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's the opposite of a ballot initiative. It's not to develop some legislation, it's to withdraw some legislation.
Yeah. And, this is a tough thing. I teach a class on Utah politics, and actually today, as a guest speaker, luckily enough, I had the campaign manager of Proposition 2 from 2018, which was the Utah Patients Coalition, was the medical marijuana bill. And he was talking about how difficult it is. I mean, in 2018, I think they only had to gather 125,000 signatures. So to gather that many signatures, he said they tried to use volunteers and could only get like 40,000. So then it's expensive. You're paying people. You're not just trying to get votes, get support. You're educating people on the issue. You're trying to motivate them to not just sign, but then turn out. It's a tricky thing. There's a reason Utah has only had one referendum in our history and only 7 ballot initiatives pass in our history.
Yeah, and although I would say this, with respect to the numbers, we're talking about Utah education. We're talking about public employees. Yeah. There are a lot of people out there. There are a lot of people that are going to get some support. And if you recall, when this legislation was being considered, we had huge numbers. We had huge protests up at the Capitol. So maybe I shouldn't be surprised that now we're addressing this. I also wonder what was the appetite for the legislature to do this in the first place. I mean, it didn't seem like it was broken. It didn't seem like there was a problem. Maybe they felt like public employees just had a little too much power, and it was too difficult to get rid of public employees that are not carrying their weight. I mean, I just didn't see this as a real powerful issue for the legislature, but it became one for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I think within the parties there are very deep divisions on the view of either private unions for private companies and these public unions. And I think a lot of it harkens back to that. When I was thinking about this, yes, we had there were overflow rooms for the overflow rooms up at the legislature. I think the day the Senate was voting on this, there were union members singing out in the rotunda. And that's honestly what I was thinking about when I heard about this referendum. I was thinking about that. And then also, if you've ever seen the firefighters when they do their fundraiser and they're out at the intersections with their boots, I mean, these are groups that know that have large number of employees that are in those same fields that already know how to organize. And I think that will be really interesting to see if they're able to harness that to get the signatures and to get that messaging campaign out.
Yeah, I think a lot of the public doesn't appreciate public sector unions. I mean, when you think about the iron workers, or the steel workers, or the auto workers, or just unions in general, but we don't think about public sector, but they exist. There's the teachers union, there's the firefighters union, and they're unions in a little bit different sense. They're governed by a different kind of law, but they're unions nonetheless, and they can collectively bargain, they can support their members, and they can negotiate for wages and things like that. I hadn't appreciated it maybe in the way that I should have, the fact that these public sector unions are as big as they are.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of times people think about the steel workers and some of these other big industries. And Utahns hear UEA and they think about a weekend they get off in the fall. They don't think about the union. But listeners of a certain age will remember how much power the UEA had in the 80s and 90s and how we had a teacher's strike. And, Governor Bangerter was having to negotiate. They have had a lot of power in the past, not nearly as much anymore. We'll see if they can wield enough power to get a referendum through.
The legislature did in the last year or so grant a fairly significant increase in wages to teachers. And maybe they felt that they were not being appreciated enough. And maybe they felt that why do you still need to organize and still have your unions when we've given you so much? So the legislature did what it did. These groups are trying to gather 141,000 signatures to oppose this bill, which will be on the ballot. If they get those signatures, my guess is they probably will. I mean, it's a lot of people to get, but my guess is they're probably going to get that. We'll continue our special coverage of the legislative session, which wraps up tomorrow after the break. We'll chat with a lawmaker about a bill to expand access to Utah's state parks. Stay with us.
This is the story of the one. As a quality technician in a food processing center, she knows that making the right call is the best way to avoid a recall. That's why she trusts Grainger's world-class supply chain to deliver the high-quality supplies she needs to help keep her production line, her equipment, and her customers happy and healthy. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
When it comes to great deals on tax prep, Jackson Hewitt isn't holding back, and neither is this commercial. Their offer is so big, it has to be said with Reverb. Expert tax prep for $149 or less. It's a deal so spectacular, it needs a symphony, some explosions, and a clock ticking, because this offer, $149 or less. Ends soon. One expert tax prep for $149 or less. Try Jackson Hewitt today and save. Whew. Limited time offer for new clients on federal returns. Participating locations only. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com/149.
Sign up for KSL Text Alerts. Get breaking news and traffic updates by texting the word news to 57500. Want access to exclusive contests? Text contest to 57500. Jazz fans, text the word jazz for breaking jazz updates. And Cougar fans, text BYU to 57500 for the latest on the Cougars. Message and data rates may apply.
Hi, I'm Utah Tax Attorney Jordan Wilcox. In these trying times, when inflation is out of control and our paychecks give us less and less money to support our families, the last thing any of us can afford is for the IRS to garnish wages, levy bank accounts, or seize assets. It's important now more than ever to protect your financial security.
We have reduced our tax liability by over $42,000.
$66,300. Let us safeguard you. Visit endtaxworry.com. We have saved countless taxpayers like you millions of dollars, kept businesses in operation, and ensured that our clients receive the best possible outcome.
Nearly $65,000.
$12,000 is something that you can look at and say, okay, I can handle that.
I'm Jordan Wilcox, your Utah tax attorney. You work hard for your money. Let us work hard for you. Visit endtaxworry.com.
We're very grateful.
Patrick was way behind on his IRS taxes.
I was in way over my head. The total amount ended up being somewhere just over $30,000. $30,000.
Then the IRS came to collect.
Started getting letter after letter. A lien had been filed against me. They were going to basically hang me completely out to dry.
He had to do something.
That's when I reached out to Optima Tax Relief.
Patrick's life quickly got a lot easier.
It was very easy. Pretty much hands off, They picked up the ball and ran with it.
And how'd it go?
I couldn't believe it. I had to ask 2 or 3 times. I saved an incredible amount of money.
How does Patrick feel about Optima?
Couldn't be happier. They definitely helped me. Optima Tax Relief. The best place to call. They're the best in the business.
Do what Patrick did and call Optima Tax Relief for a free consultation. Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. Optima Tax Relief. Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Febreze. It's a classic odor tale. You fried fish for dinner, cleaned up, but the smell is still in the house. And the neighbors are coming over for game night. They're on their way. And then you spray Febreze Air Mist. Febreze Air starts working instantly to fight even your toughest odors, so you go from fish to fresh like that. Now, all you have to worry about is Pam cheating at charades.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
This is the story of the one. He's responsible for keeping a leading healthcare facility clean and safe. And he trusts Grainger's high-quality HVAC cleaning and safety products, combined with their world-class supply chain, to consistently deliver, ensuring he's covered inside and out, so he can focus on keeping his facility clean to help protect the health of everyone inside. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, do it now. Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Eye on the Hill 2025. Special coverage on Inside Sources.
With so much talk of cuts to the federal workforce, including Parks and Forest Service officers, it's brought up questions of how the state can step in to promote our own state parks. State Representative Doug Welton is pushing a bill that would expand accessibility access to Utah state parks, hoping to make it easier for everyone to enjoy the outdoors. He joins us today to talk more about House Bill 336, State Park Accessibility Amendments. Representative, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So you're here in the studio. Session's got another day, and you've got a bill. So tell us where we are with that.
Well, we've passed unanimously through the House and both committees. We're just waiting for the final hearing in the Senate, and we anticipate a positive result, and we just got to get it through.
So tell our listeners about the bill. What does it do?
Yeah, so this bill is it was brought to me by my constituents. I have a gentleman in Santaquin who's working with some folks who have disabilities, and one of the problems we find in the state of Utah is we have this beautiful state, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And we have a lot of people that come here to enjoy it, but sometimes their own families don't get to enjoy it. And so if you've got a child with a disability, particularly mobility disability, they can't go out there. And so this was brought to me by a constituent, and we sat down and we listened to him and what the problem was, and we found a good path forward to make it so we have better access to our state parks for all Utahns.
So what does this mean? Does this mean more paved trails, better bathrooms? What will your constituents see?
Yeah, so initially we were looking at doing a pilot project that would create some better avenues for access to our state parks. And we realized we didn't have to do that. We had our state parks already working on this. So what this does is it does actually create an opportunity for them to look at their parks and decide where they can make better access. Obviously, you're not going to give access, or you're not going to pave everything because that destroys the outdoors, but we want to make sure that they have access to this. And so this will also allow them, probably the biggest thing to this is this will allow them to get adaptive use equipment for areas where people can explore and partake in the beauties of Utah.
As we see less and less support and funding to our national parks, do you see this ever expanding into the state sort of helping out and stepping up with some of what's going on nationally?
Possibly. I think the national parks have actually kind of stepped in this space earlier than the state does. In fact, one of the coolest videos you'll see is Sam Durst from Springville. He's got cerebral palsy and he's not been able to get out, and he tells the story of being able to go into parks, and his family would go out and he had to stay back in the car, and his mom or another family member had to stay back. And about a year or 2 years ago, he was able to take this adaptive wheelchair up to Arches National Park and to Delicate Arch. And there's video of it. You can watch it online, and it's just amazing. And it's kind of a tearjerker to see just how happy he is to see this beautiful place. And so our national parks have been doing it, and we're trying to get that to state parks and find appropriate places where we can recreate and experience the beauty of the state of Utah for all Utahns.
We've had a lot of conversations about some of the things that are happening with federal or employees and layoffs and those sorts of things. Is this something that either through this bill or any other things that the state is getting ready for that maybe we might need to help out with either the national parks or the state parks, or might see more visitors if they don't have access to the national parks?
Sure. This one doesn't deal directly with national parks, but it does. It will help us to serve more people from all walks of life and all families. That is something that Utah really prides itself on is our management of our public lands and making sure that we have access to them and we have the ability to recreate and hike and camp and do all of those amazing things. And our state employees are up to the task, and our state is ready to step into that and make sure that we're good to go.
It would seem that a lot of people would be curious, and maybe there isn't an exact number, but there's got to be a note to this. This has got to be something, and we're flush right now in Utah. It seems like we're in a good position to do things like this, but is the legislature behind you financially? Do they feel like this is something we can fund?
Yeah, so the bill that I have actually doesn't have a fiscal note on it. One of the things that we found through the process is that there's a lot of grant money already available to be able to buy adaptive equipment. We just needed to change the code make it so that was something that they could purchase. And so this actually isn't coming from the traditional state funds. This is grant money, national, local. Some of it comes through state grants that already exist.
So there's federal money available. We're just not taking advantage of it, and this could help us do that.
Correct.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting. And I know we're talking about very short term. We're talking about how do we make it more accessible? How do we get families there? What's your long-term goals here with this and either just Utah or outdoor recreation in general?
Well, I would love to see some sort of a program that's kind of similar to what we see at our ski resorts. You got your black diamonds and your blue slopes and your green slopes, where we can identify places in the state for different levels of access to make sure that we have some that might be all access, including like mobilized wheelchairs, electronic. But there are some places where we probably don't want those because they will wear out, the rock and things like that. And so there's some other lighter wheelchairs like Extreme Modus is doing that are lightweight. They can actually float on water, so you can take them down the Zion slot and they can float through the water, and you can push them and then they go up rocks. And so I think this will expand that access to all Utahns. This gets our kids off of our phones. It creates strong family time and ties together. My strongest memories are from being outside and camping and hiking, and my dad telling crazy ghost stories in the tent and scaring us to death. And so anything we can do to open that up to all Utahns, where they can spend quality family time, we can build families, we can build communities, and just enjoy what we have and protect what we have too. I think that's important. So that's what we're trying to do.
I love that analogy you just made also, of skiing. And Greg just told me that he is a ski patrol.
I work up at Powder Mountain up in the Ogden Valley.
It's fantastic.
40 years as a patroller.
Yeah, what that makes me think of, you were talking about black diamonds, the blues, the greens. But one thing you also see if you're at specific resorts is the ability resources, that they're teaching people with special needs, that they have specialty skis and sleds and chairs now, making it so our mountains are more accessible, which makes so much sense. Why wouldn't we want our Red Rock to be accessible
and
as
our
well?
summertime, springtime events too.
Yeah.
What they're doing with skis is really cool. Like that's seeing them on those little chair skis and whatever else. Like that's really.
Well, and even e-bikes. I've heard some people talk about, I know that there are some trails and people really don't like to see that e-bike. They want to see someone pedaling and working for their ride. But I've heard other people talk about e-bikes as an accessibility thing. It makes it so people of a certain age or with certain cartilage in their knees and these other things make it so they can still be on those trails that they enjoy.
Yeah, and I love that. In Payson, when I was on city council, we actually fought really hard to preserve an area. It's called Forbay. And to keep it from being developed and also make it accessible for all residents to be able to use. And we want our aging generation, they still want to enjoy the outdoors and to be able to go out with grandma and grandpa and their grandkids and to be able to go for a ride together and summit a peak or something like that. Maybe not a peak, but like a hill together and experience that time together. That's powerful for communities.
We've got less than a minute left, Representative. Okay. What do you suppose is going to happen to the legislature in the next 36 hours?
You have 30 seconds to answer that question.
Yeah, 30 seconds, yeah.
30 seconds. Well, I hopefully we get moving on our bills. We're going to see all of our budget bills will come out and they'll be finalized. There'll be a few bills we're watching between the House and the Senate that there's some disagreement on, like a fees bill regarding transportation fees. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. But mostly it'll be pretty frenetic and fast-paced, and it'll be good.
Thank you for joining us. We'll be back after this break to talk about some tax cuts and some other things that are happening on the legislature. Stay with us.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Maria Chaleos. KSL's top story. Utah Congresswoman Celeste Malloy wants states, including Utah, to stay on daylight saving time year-round if they choose. State Representative Joseph Ellison sponsored a bill to allow Utahns to stop changing the clocks, and he says he supports Malloy's efforts, but he's concerned about how people reacted after Utah tried this in the 1970s.
I'm a little concerned about what that's going to look like, and then are we going to be back to this later on? I don't know. But the fact that we are addressing it and that it might finally happen, I'm supportive of it.
Ellison's bill was put on hold. A new Deseret News Hinckley Institute of Politics poll found more than 80% of Utahns want to stop changing the clocks. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Trump has postponed tariffs on some goods from Canada, now in addition to the Mexican tariff pause. This has investors rattled.
Americans are trying to navigate the uncertainty of tariffs. That includes farmers who plan months in advance to buy and sell. Jack Vesey is a fourth-generation produce grower in California and says farmers can't turn on a dime.
There's certain things that, might be a positive for us. There may be some things that might be negatives. Concern on fertilizer price and some of our inputs. If those increase, that's going to put a damper on things. That's going to increase our cost.
Razor-thin margins that could make or break the season's crop. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Markets definitely rattled today. The Dow down by 468 points at the close. That's a full percent, sitting at 42,538. S&P down by 104 points. The NASDAQ, it's down by 471. That's 2.5%. Expect the wet weather to stick around for a bit. We'll update the forecast coming up next. KSL News Time, 2:02.
Spend less time at the post office. With Formax and Mint mailing systems from Les Olson IT, you can quickly, accurately, and easily process your outgoing mail and even save on postage. Fold your documents, stuff and seal your envelopes, print addresses, weigh and measure to apply proper postage, all with the click of a button. With multiple model options available, you're sure to find a Formax solution and Mint mailing device that perfectly fits your business needs.
Les Olson IT.
As a business owner looking to take your business to the next level, it's all about the right marketing. But what exactly is right for you? At KSL News Radio, we are ready to help you craft the perfect comprehensive strategy. Whether it's our powerful talent endorsements, engaging live interviews, creative production, live events, or our extensive digital platforms, we've got you covered with the right solution. Contact Stephanie Palmer today, spalmer@ksl.com, and let's grow your business together. Email spalmer@ksl.com.
Do you have some money in a savings account? If you do, I want to suggest that you earn more money on that money by transferring your savings account over to UCCU.
Utah Community Credit Union is offering high-rate savings options with yields up to 5.05%. That is a lot higher than any savings account.
Right, so your average savings account is 0.5%, 0.5%, but UCCU has these 9-month savings certificates at a whopping 5.05% rate of return.
Now, savings certificates, like a savings account, they're great ways to earn a safe return on your money, but the difference is a savings account, you deposit, you withdraw, but with a savings certificate, you just make the deposit and you let your money earn some money for you.
For 9 months in this case, or if you want to let it stay in a little longer and earn more money, there's a 15-month savings certificate as well. But either way, you're going to be saving so much money at UCCU.
5.05%, that's more than 5 times higher than a standard savings account.
Just go to UCCU.com, select a high-yield savings option, and supercharge your savings.
At Utah Community Credit Union, you're going to love where you bank.
A reminder about the simplest way to get updated for your day.
Hit your KSL preset when you jump in the car, and we'll take care of the rest.
Hear key news updates and traffic reports.
Andy and Amanda from 5 to 9 in your car.
KSL News Radio at 102.7 FM.
Traffic and weather together, and it is emergency traffic coverage right now on KSL News Radio. It's brought to you by Mountain America's low-rate auto loans. Ricky, what is happening?
Well, the hits just keep on coming, Maria. I'm afraid our latest problem is a rock slide in Provo Canyon. Both east and westbound directions are impacted on Highway 189. This is between Bridal Veil Falls and Vivian Park, and crews are stopping traffic both directions in order to clear the road. And these rocks are big enough that they've got a couple of bulldozers and construction equipment in order to get the road cleared. Then we have
Delays in Parley's Canyon due to a rollover accident eastbound I-80 prior to Parley's Summit. It's been blocking right lanes of traffic, causing a couple of miles of solid backups. We've had the closure of SR 92, the Alpine Scenic Highway, due to multiple crashes and slide-offs a couple of miles after the Highway 189 junction. But they still have eastbound traffic stopped. Westbound is stopped, but they're trying to get traffic to use an alternate route. Again, that's the spot, Alpine Scenic Highway. Avoid that area. If you're traveling the Salt Lake County freeways, we still have wet road conditions, so you still want to use a bit of caution if you're out and driving on the roads today. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Taking a look at the forecast, a bit of a break right now downtown Salt Lake City, but the rain is going to turn to snow in the valleys by tomorrow, and expect the showers to continue. 90% chance today, 60% chance tomorrow, and then it looks like a dry weekend. Right now, 40 degrees in downtown Salt Lake City. I'm Maria Chaleos from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. A new presidency, new state leaders, and a new legislative session. Utah's top political experts discuss the day's biggest stories. Only on KSL News Radio.
Eye on the Hill 2025. Special coverage on Inside Sources.
Utahns will soon see several tax cuts as a result of legislation passed during this legislative session. It's a continuation of a trend with the legislature. They've cut taxes in some form year after year after year. This morning, Senate and House Majority Leadership outlined several of this year's cuts. We're joined by the Executive Appropriations Vice Chair, State Representative Walt Brooks, to talk more about these cuts and what we can see from them. Representative Brooks, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for allowing me to be on.
And talk to our listeners, Representative, about what tax cuts we can expect this year.
Well, the two biggest one that we're dealing with, and in fact, one just passed, was our Social Security tax. That's been something we've been working on for years and years to try to get off, and we've moved that threshold quite far. So this year, our current tax status, if you have a couple of two living in your home, if they make less than $75,000 in their retirement, they don't pay any tax on Social Security, and we moved that threshold up to $90,000. So now, if somebody's and then them and their wife make less than $90,000, they don't pay tax on Social Security. So we've been just chipping that away. It started down in the low 30s, and now we got it up at $90,000. The other one, the big one, is probably income tax, and we're moving at 5 basis points or 0.05%. And that alone doesn't sound like a lot, but that same type of chip away method that we've been working on over the last 9-10 years, we've reduced income tax by a whole 10%. So I think that we're moving in the right direction to make sure that we are taking less money out of the citizens' pockets, because they can do more with it than we can, and being responsible. You mentioned 4 tax cuts. So the last 2 there's a child tax credit. We used to give a child tax credit for kids 0 to 4, and we expanded that to 0 to 5. And also daycare centers that are creating a daycare, giving them a tax cut, so we hopefully drive more people into that business, so they create more opportunities, and then driving the price down for families.
Representative, thank you for going through those. I think it can be really overwhelming sometimes for people trying to understand, especially when they hear tax code. They just sort of zone out and don't know what we're even talking about. But I want to talk about the numbers of people that this will be impacting. You talked about how you've been just trying to chip away at the income tax and sort of chip away also that Social Security tax. How many people, especially when it comes to the Social Security tax and that child tax credit, how many families do we think this will be impacting in Utah?
I don't have the exact number that way. I measure more my percentage. On the Social Security, it's over 80% now should be able to be qualified and not have any taxes on their Social Security. And the families, it's a smaller number because we're talking young families with kids 0 to 5. But we're just trying to make sure that what are we doing for everybody? We have older people in the state, we have this general population, and we have young families. And getting into homes or just grocery prices, So we try to be really holistic in looking at this, that we're not just focusing on just one area, but trying to give everybody in the state some benefit on their tax.
Representative Brooks, what are we doing right in this state? It seems like every year, at least for the last 4 or 5 years since I've been hosting these shows, we have legislation reducing taxes for Utahns.
Mm-hmm.
How are we able to do that? And it's seemingly every year.
Well, it doesn't happen by accident, that's for sure. So we have a really conservative state, and we try to pass really conservative laws that allow business to thrive. So we try to don't have a lot of regulatory laws in place so business can operate. We try to make sure that our budget is within check. One of the processes that we do up here, that we're actually the only state that does this, is every single legislator sits on an appropriation committee, and we break them up, and I think we have 8 different committees, and they go through the budget and cut it out, like what programs aren't working, what programs are not giving us the result, and they take we took out $100 million just in that process. So this year we didn't have a lot of extra revenue coming into the state, and that's a good thing, right? Because that means we're taking less tax dollars from people. But as we make these cuts, if other places, departments or universities want new programs, our first question is, well, what are you going to cut to replace that? Kind of taking the mindset of what do we do in our own families? We just don't keep buying and buying and buying. We got to stay within our budget, and that's something we do every year. We balance our budget, and we try to make sure that it's as slim as possible.
Representative, one of the things we heard throughout the session is that this is a socks and underwear year. This is going to be a tight budget. And I think one representative maybe even said this is a just wash your socks and underwear kind of year.
That's right.
So this is a really tight year. In addition to these tax cuts, just this week, it was announced that teachers would be getting a pay raise. So, of course, as you were just saying, does that mean perhaps the income tax revenue is really strong, or does that mean that other programs were cut? How did this all come to be?
Well, we did have some growth in the state, so there was some revenue there, but most of our money that comes in is because we do have a strong economy, and that increases the income tax, which primarily goes to the education. So we did have money there that we could give to the teachers. That's where that came from. A lot of the other cuts had to come from different departments, so we could make these other cuts that were necessary.
We talked a lot about the income tax reduction, Social Security tax reduction. Talk to our listeners a little bit, Representative, about the child tax credit and the child tax credit for businesses. It seems like what you're trying to do is encourage businesses to have daycare, to have things available for their employees, correct?
It is. Right now, our economy is booming, but also prices have gone up, which is requiring 2 people to work in a home instead of just typically one person working and one person at home taking the kids. And so if you look at the child care costs, sometimes it costs just as much to take care of your child as it does to go to work that you're bringing in. So how can we kind of boost this industry a little bit to provide more resources? And the only lever we really can pull there, because we don't want to get involved in business, is how do we reduce the burden? So if we can put a little bit of tax credit towards businesses that are going into that industry to help them be more viable, then we're going to see more of those pop up, and more pop up is going to drive the prices down. It's just supply and demand. So we try to look at the economics of the whole piece and say how can we really help these young families that really are struggling. House prices are through the roof. Inflation is up, costs that we don't get to control in the state necessarily. So what can we do as legislators to provide something that would have a lasting benefit?
You've been really nice and talked taxes and budget with us for the last 8 minutes. So in the last minute or so, are there other issues, other things that you'd really like to talk about that you are watching in this last 36 hours of this session?
Oh, geez. This is a 45-day session, so we have every topic coming out, and there's a lot of really important ones. One of the bigger ones is energy. How do we make sure that we have good, reliable, dispatchable power? How do we make sure that power stays affordable? Because we have one of the lowest power rates in the nation, and low energy costs drives economies, whether it's electricity or whether it's fuel. So how do we make sure that we put those regulatory pieces in place to make sure that our economy does not stifled by, policy. So energy is a big one. Public education is a big one. How do we make sure that regulations in business in general are reduced? How do we make sure we keep government from growing? A fascinating piece that I loved was over the last 20 years, we have not seen an increase in state employees, even though our population has climbed 1 million people. And that's a good sign that we have people that are really trying to keep the government costs low so people can keep their own money.
Representative Brooks, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and thank you for the service that you give to our state. When we come back after the break, a Democratic lawmaker was censured by the U.S. House today for his outburst during President Trump's address to Congress earlier this week. More on that after the break.
Do you need new windows? Look, all glass pretty much looks the same to the naked eye, but if your windows aren't triple-coated, argon-filled and sealed double-pane glass, the cold is seeping in. You need to call Advanced Window Products. They use the highest quality glass and premium vinyl to create state-of-the-art windows and frames, and for 38 years, they build those frames right here in Utah. Custom crafted for Utah's climate. The best windows you can buy at prices 30 and 40% less than what the big companies charge because they cut out the middleman. They're the factory. They even give you a lifetime warranty, and right now as we head into spring, save an extra $2,500 off 10 windows or more. Custom windows that'll give your house a fresh new look and save you money on your heating and air conditioning. Advanced Windows offers 60-month 0% financing, even buy now, pay later, and an extra $2,500 off. Call for a quote. 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or go to advancedwindows.com.
Emergency traffic on KSL News Radio, brought to you by Mountain America's low-rate auto loans. We wanted to give you an update on all the problems that we've had happening in the drive. A lot of this could be weather-related because we've had reduced visibility, snowfall, wet driving conditions, and slick road conditions. First, in Parley's Canyon, lingering residual delays eastbound to I-80 due to an earlier rollover crash approaching Parley's Summit. It is now over to the right. Still a little bit of backup in Utah County. We have Highway 189 open once again from the earlier rock slide that occurred between Bridal Veil Falls and Vivian Park. And even though crews made fast work of clearing the road, there's still some busy traffic both directions trying to get through that area. But we still have the closure in place from the multiple crashes and slide-offs on the Alpine Scenic Highway SR 92. It's occurring a couple of miles in from the Highway 189 junction there at Provo Canyon. And that's where we have delays on both the direction on SR 92 and on Highway 189 in that center lane. Again, you need to plan ahead and just avoid that spot altogether. Wasatch Front businesses and property managers, GoPave Utah provides all asphalt repairs for your parking. For patching and paving along the Wasatch Front, contact GoPave Utah. GoPaveUtah.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
If there's a problem during your siding, gutter, or window installation project, most contractors will try to hide it, ignore it, or blame someone else. It's called passing the buck or turning a blind eye, or my favorite, finger pointing. My question is, where is the accountability? Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors, and look, sometimes problems just happen, no matter who you hire. Maybe the wrong color siding gets delivered, despite the order being placed perfectly, or maybe a downspout gets cut short. Honestly, it could be anything. At RGS Exteriors, mistakes are rare. But if something goes wrong, I can absolutely, positively, 100% guarantee you we'll never hide it and we'll never pass the buck. We'll make certain everything turns out right for you. That's people over profits. That's the RGS Exteriors way. For a free estimate on siding, gutters, or windows, call 801-280-3110, rgsexteriors.com, rgsexteriors.com.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part? They accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right, so we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Is that a new Samsung Galaxy A15 5G?
Yeah, I got it for free when I joined Cricket Nation.
Sounds pretty great.
At Cricket, anyone can get a new phone when they switch.
Whoa.
With a high-quality camera, meaning more flattering selfies for all. And super fast 5G, so you can post them for all to see. Your friends, your family, your ex. Free phone! Free phone!
Okay, I'll switch.
Welcome to Cricket Nation.
Cricket 5G is not available everywhere. Must bring your number to Cricket on a $60 a month voice plan. First month service charge and tax due at sale. These terms and other restrictions apply. See cricketwireless.com for details.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
This morning, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to censure Texas Representative Al Green for his outburst during Trump's address to Congress earlier this week. Actually, 10 Democrats joined Republicans in the vote, and it's an example of how President Trump is both unifying and dividing Democrats. Let's talk about that. And before we do, let me just give you Speaker Mike Johnson's take on this resolution.
We take no pleasure in this. I gave repeated warnings to Representative Green to stand down and to sit down, and he refused to do it. He chose to deliberately violate House rules in a manner that we think is probably unprecedented in history, interrupting the message of a president of the United States who is an honored guest.
And of course, the Democrats, this is House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on why he voted no.
The censure resolution put forth by extreme MAGA Republicans is not worth the paper that it was written on.
True or not? I mean, there was a censure. It was voted on. It was passed by a majority, and 10 Democrats joined Republicans. And let's keep in mind, Morgan, that it is just a censure. It's a slap on the hand. It's a don't ever do that again. But it's also has some significance in terms of just, the public appreciating that Congress is doing something to police itself.
Yeah, I mean, what the speaker said is that this is unprecedented. It is not unprecedented. We've seen a growing number of members of Congress speaking out, yelling, having outbursts during presidential speeches, and this conversation was reminding me of, I think it's really just been the last 15 or 16 years where this has become more of a norm. And it was Obama's very first address to Congress when a Republican member of the House yelled, "You lie."
I remember that, yes.
Yes, which then Saturday Night Live did a great parody of Representative Joe Wilson of South Carolina. And since then, we've seen people become louder, groups. In President Biden's last addresses, we saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert being quite loud. So I think a lot of people are saying this isn't quite as unprecedented as I think we're making it out to be. But on the other side of that coin, people are saying, oh, I would love a little more decorum, so maybe I don't mind this censure too much.
Yeah, I mean, some people might think maybe we should do things like they do in Great Britain, where they're screaming and yelling at each other, and even some of these other countries where you see people throwing down on each other. It's sad, and it was sad to me because, I mean, I'm a Democrat, but I have a lot of Republican friends, and they were sending me texts before the speech with Trump began saying, what's your over and under on how many Democrats are going to be removed from the House during this speech? And it was somewhere between 1 and 3. I mean, people actually predicted it would occur, and in fact, it did occur. So he was removed. He was censured. And then during this censure vote, I guess he sort of sits there in the middle of the room, in the, sort of the timeout corner, and they take this vote, and like I said, 10 Democrats supported it.
Yeah, I think this is interesting, and this sort of underlies that idea that Republicans seem to be a lot more unified right now. I think a lot of people wondered if they'd be able to get themselves together after the general election, and they certainly have. Whereas Democrats, though this is always a Democratic issue, I actually heard the quote this morning, I think it's a Jesse Jackson quote, that Democrats need two wings to fly, sort of making a joke at how Democrats just aren't that great at unifying. And we're seeing that in live action right now.
Yeah, after the vote, as the resolution was required of him, Green stood in the well of the House while Speaker Mike Johnson read the censure resolution to him. While he was doing that, dozens of Democrats sang, "We shall overcome," in a show of solidarity as the speaker repeatedly told him to stop and stop, yelled, "Order, order," and some of the other Congress people were saying, "Hey, wait a minute, let's get through this." But, I mean, boy, I hope this isn't I was going to say, I hope this isn't something new. You've already said it's not new at all, but I hope it's not going to be more commonplace, I guess.
Well, and this is also reminding me, we've seen this at the state level. We've seen this with some protests in some state capitals where they can't even perform business. We saw this in Tennessee where they removed from office 3 members of the legislature, or I think it was 2. I think they censured 3 over some rowdy behavior on the floor, which was, some argued, wasn't all that rowdy. I think debating gun legislation. So we are in a time of pushing against the norms of this country.
Yeah.
Democratic norms, societal norms, all the norms. And so, maybe this is some people trying to push back. In fact, these 10 Democrats saying, hey, can we just maybe act with a little more dignity, a little more civility when we're on the floor? I know there were some Democratic members who did not even go to the speech. They didn't want to sit through it, which you could argue whether there is a strategy and also norm breaking there. But no matter how you slice it, it is, as President Trump would say, it's good TV.
Yeah, and even further from what you just said about the Democrats, it was clear right at the outset as Trump entered the chambers and as he started speaking, and of course, sometimes he'll speak and people will stand and cheer, the Democrats were dead silent. And they were not supporting him at all. And I don't know whether that was some sort of show of solidarity or maybe that's just commonplace also. But maybe I'm just too old, but I remember the day when the president enters the room and everybody cheers, no matter what side you're on. And people are shaking his hand as he's walking down the aisle and trying to get his attention. And sometimes they'll say things that maybe the one party doesn't like, but there's still some level of appreciation for what's going on. And I think that there is so much animosity right now between Democrats and President Trump that it was hard for some of them to say, I'm not going to be the one that stands up and cheers for President Trump, although he's the president of the United States.
Yeah, even if perhaps they weren't standing up for every applause line, there would be things woven into speeches where everyone could stand up. And as you said, when, they come in and make the big announcement that the president, Mr. Speaker, the president of the United States, everyone at least stands and shows that respect. And that is not where we are with the 2 major parties and the president right now.
Yeah, so the vote to censure him was 224 in favor, 198 against, with 10 Democrats joining all the Republicans in improving the censure resolution. The Green and another freshman congressman voted present. In other words, they didn't vote one way or the other. And like you said, a couple members of the Democrats, I guess some people just didn't vote at all, but it was still, a majority said, let's censure him. And that's a censure. It, like I say, it doesn't really count to much, but it maybe gets somebody's attention in the future that, hey, if you do this again, you're going to be brought to the table and we're going to do something about it, even if it's just a censure.
Yeah. I'm also curious. I wanted to look up these 10 Democrats. I want to look up and see how close their elections were and see if maybe they're representing a little more purple districts where they have to be a little careful about how they vote on some of these really high-profile issues.
Or maybe, like you said earlier, just let's have a sense of decorum.
Right.
I mean,
I
that
hope
doesn't
that's
make
what it
any
is.
sense. Like,
Right.
let's just whoever does it, from which side you're on, that's not what you do. If you don't like Donald Trump, you don't like his message, you don't like what he's doing, don't applaud, don't stand up, but sit there or stand there as he did. I think he had a cane and he was sort of shaking it and saying things toward Trump. And he was warned repeatedly, sit down, take your seat. And I guess there was sort of a 3 strikes rule. They finally asked the congressional guard to take him out.
Yeah, well, and historians of the Capitol know that there are people that used to use canes as weapons when they'd get too mad at their colleagues. So you got to be careful when you're waving a cane around the Capitol.
Yeah, I guess so. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about a local effort to get more women running for political office. We'll talk about that after the break.
Good afternoon. It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Maria Shilaos. KSL's top local story. Lagoon is shutting down their zoo featured in the Wild Kingdom train ride. Spokesperson Adam Leishman says the protesters aren't the reason the zoo is being phased out.
The decision to actually phase out the zoo is primarily just for new developments and new attractions for our guests.
The zoo has drawn in protesters for decades with multiple petitions getting hundreds of signatures. Leishman says the park has always treated the animals well. Our top national story from ABC News. Vatican officials say Pope Francis's condition remains stable after 3 weeks in the hospital battling pneumonia.
He continued with his physiotherapy, both the breathing exercises and motor physiotherapy, get his body going a little bit more. Blood pressure and blood tests remain stable, and he's got no fever. And then, to me, this is the most significant news that we got. The doctors say, in view of the stability of the clinical picture, the next media bulletin will be on Saturday. So they don't feel the need to come out and tell us every jot and tittle of how he's doing, because he's steady as he goes.
That is ABC's Terry Moran reporting. Taking a look at your money at this moment, the Dow closed down 468 points, more than a full percent, sitting at 42,538. S&P down by 104, and the NASDAQ down 471 points, down 2.5%. A bit of a break in the showers, but they're not going anywhere. We have some snow in the forecast. Stay with us.
At JCW's, we think tipping might be getting a little out of hand. Like when you're asked to tip at the register before you've even been served. Or when you're at the yogurt shop and find yourself serving yourself. And don't even get us started on frosted tips making a comeback. That's why at JCW's, when you pay for a 3rd-pound ranch bacon cheeseburger, that's what you pay. And no one at the register is going to stare longingly at you while you awkwardly maneuver through the tip screen for food you don't even have yet. Honestly, we're just happy to see you at any of our 5 locations in Provo, South Jordan, Lehigh, Harriman, and American Fork. So come on in and enjoy some quality time and great food with family and friends. And we promise, we won't be pushing you for a tip.
Hey, this is Chris with JCW's, and we just want to say thank you, and especially to our loyal customers. We want you to know that at JCW's, your business is all the tip we need. JCW's, quality and a lot of it.
What was that? That is business phone bliss with the Ooma Cloud Phone System. It handles all our voice, video, and messaging needs.
You sound very...
Calm? I am. Ooma has everything I need to run my business more efficiently, like virtual receptionist, call routing, and video conferencing. And it starts at just $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Nice. Find your business calm at ooma.com/radio.
Spring is finally here, and so are spring projects. So get them started at Harbor Freight's parking lot sale. This weekend, save on products like pressure washers for $69.99, 42-inch roller cabinets for under $500, plus 30% off Hercules corded power tools. Whatever you do, do it for less at Harbor Freight. Valid until 3/9/25 while supplies last. Limitations apply, so spring in before it's over.
With 415,000 Utahns and 1 in 6 Utah kids facing hunger, Utah Food Bank, Macy's Grocery, Lee's Marketplace, and Lynn's need your help to fight hunger statewide. Simply fill a bag with non-perishable food donations and put it at your doorstep by 9 a.m. on Saturday, March 15th to support the Feed Utah food drive. Donations will be picked up by volunteers and can be the difference between hunger and hope. Learn more about how you can be a part of the statewide effort at utahfoodbank.org/feedutah.
The sources where we get our news matters.
When you listen to Utah's Morning News, we want you to feel the stories are important to you and trustworthy. This is Amanda Dixon.
And I'm Andy Farnsworth. Join us weekday mornings on KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together is brought to you by Mountain America's low-rate auto loans. Ricky Meese, bit of an improvement.
It is. We now have rain, though. It's coming through the valley once again on southbound I-15, slowing speeds between Draper and the point of the mountain. And we still have the road closed due to multiple crashes and slide-offs. This is in Utah County. SR 92 Alpine Scenic Highway. It's a couple of miles in from the Highway 189 junction, Provo Canyon, but the backups already go to 189 and on Highway 189 in that center lane itself, where people are just sitting there until they have a chance to go on to SR 92. No idea how long this is going to be closed. You may want to think ahead and try to find an alternate route or just avoid the area if at all possible. Looking for Saturday morning fun for your kids? Try Utah Symphony's family concerts at Abravanel Hall. Kids tickets start at $6. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
The mix of rain and snow showers continuing along the Wasatch Front through midday tomorrow. More snow showers in the valley tomorrow than today. Right now, 41 degrees. I'm Maria Shaleas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
One organization is working to get more women involved in Utah politics as candidates themselves. And Morgan, it seems like we have this conversation every couple of years, what we're doing and what we're doing right and maybe wrong about getting more and more women to run. But for whatever reason, we don't seem to have the numbers that should be supported by women voters.
Well, certainly. We're nowhere close to parity. We do have some states, actually, where they do have pretty equal representation between men and women. Utah, we're not there yet, but we are seeing big improvements. We were seeing improvements in the 90s, and then it really, really tapered off. And then thanks, I think, to the work of Utah Women Run and other great organizations, we've been training more women, encouraging more women, and we are seeing more women run and be successful.
Well, we're joined this afternoon by Becky Edwards from Utah Women Run, a board member. Becky, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for discussing this really important topic.
So Morgan mentioned something very important, but Becky, tell us what we can do, what you're all doing to get more women to consider, or at least to put their foot in the door about running for political office.
Well, we are one of the organizations in Utah who's really deeply engaged in this issue, and we're so grateful for many of our partners who are as well. But our specific space is helping women really get trained up to run for office. So we have an annual training that's coming up on Saturday, March 15th, and we welcome folks to join us at that training. That this year is going to be focused on change makers and how women have the ability to be change makers in their communities in a variety of different ways. And I think we've got a great program set out. And it's interesting when you think about why don't we have more women stepping up to run for office? And I think this starts so far beyond that day when you actually file to run and put your name on the ballot. It's long before that day. We need to help women identify the work they're already doing in their communities, in their faith communities and their families as leadership. We have tremendous women leaders around the state who do not see that work as really being leaders, but if they do, it's a very easy translation from what they're already doing to being a leader in the political realm. And that's one of the things that is our focus.
Becky, I love what you said, and I know, and I'd love actually, maybe you could speak a little bit about your journey and how Utah Women Run is trying to capture more of that. I know you and I have both been on this board for many years, and we used to just really focus on being a candidate, and we tried to expand to all different types of engagement in public life and politics. But I like to sort of joke that the PTA is the slippery slope into political action for women. So maybe can you talk a little bit about your journey into running for political office and how we're trying to give other women that opportunity?
Exactly. So for many years, I was a full-time stay-at-home mom and had been involved in all the things that so many of your friends and neighbors and yourself are involved in as women, the PTA and working in the schools and working for causes that were really important to me, like Head Start and other things. And I saw that as a very welcoming and natural space for me to represent my community members. And it wasn't until many years after spending a lot of my efforts doing that, many years later, having some folks say, have you ever thought about running for public office? And without even thinking, the word came out of my mouth, and it was yes. And I realized at that time, I had actually been preparing for this for a long time, and that running for public office was a natural extension of the involvement in my community that I've been doing for a long time. And that is not a unique story. I think for so many women, this is exactly the same place that they find themselves in. And we've seen, political leadership look a certain way, act a certain way, and we don't always see ourselves in that model, but we can change the model to reflect who we are. And that's, I think, one of the real benefits of the organization Utah Women Run is just saying, listen, bring what you have to the table. It's so valuable and would be very, very relevant and impactful in the public service sphere.
And I love the theme this year. Again, we're planning this training March 15th. Registration is still open if you want to go to utahwomenrun.org. But your theme this year is change makers. So talk a little bit about that and who you're bringing to the event.
Well, with the model of we have good leaders from all across the state. We have all different types of makers, so change makers, and we start off with a tremendous panel of what we call history makers, and this is representatives Verona Maunga and Hong Nguyen, who were just recently elected as first representatives from the AAPI community here in the state of Utah. And they're joined by Natalie Pinckney, the first Black woman representing or being represented on the Salt Lake County Council. These are women who have been bold in their aspirations and have really taken to heart the kinds of things we're talking about here today. And then we move to story makers, and this is, how to message your story and how to tell your personal story. Motivation makers from small business owner Mackenzie Bauer. Inspiration makers, this is former Miss Utah and BYU student body president who in that realm has really been a remarkable leader. We moved to really highlighting some of our community partners, and this is everyone from Women's Leadership Institute, League of Women Voters, Women's Influence Network, people across the state who are engaged in this space, and then all the way to a group of women who have just started posting on Instagram account to be a place where other like-minded women gather and can share ideas. And then after lunch, we have two breakouts, one where you get really in the weeds of running for office, and that's called Candidate Makers, and that is how to choose a race, fundraising, aptly titled Money Makers, team makers and community makers. And then the second breakout is how to find a pathway into women's leadership in the political sphere by working first in advocacy, nonprofit, government work, and then boards and commissions, and policy makers, impact makers, and movement makers. a great time for women to see that this is possible, to network and realize that you're not alone in this same desire. And what I've seen over and over at trainings like this is women who attend and they think, I don't think I'm going to do this for a long, long time. This is maybe in my future in, 20 years, 10 years down the road. And it's never surprising when shortly after the training, we start to see names of women who have attended the training on the filing to run for office. And especially in a year when it is municipal elections, this is an area that Utah has really become, we've seen more and more parity in city council and mayoral races around the state. And this feels like a smaller barrier to entry because you leave behind some of the partisan dialogue that is very challenging for a lot of just people in general, I'd say.
I love it, Becky. And again, people can register at utahwomenrun.org. This is an incredible day. Even if you just want to be inspired and hear some amazing women speak, it is well worth everyone's time.
That was great. And in our final segment on today's Inside Sources, let's talk about some federal judges and some new threats they're facing and the warning from the U.S. Marshal Service. We'll be back right after this.
These days, losing weight is such a roller coaster. You try the new medications, and when you stop taking them, you gain it all back.
Today is a new day. Today is a new day.
Let Soda Weight Loss teach you the healthy, natural way to let go of the weight for good.
Do you know how good it feels to let go of 51 pounds of belly fat? And I did it without drugs, shots, or hunger. Because Soda Weight Loss works. Just look at all the Google reviews and all the thousands of before and after pictures.
For a limited time, 2 people can start with Soda Weight Loss for the price of 1.
What does that mean? It's more fun?
Double the motivation, double the results, half the cost.
The best decision I've made in a long time was just to call Soda Weight Loss.
Take advantage of Soda Weight Loss 2-for-1 partner program. Visit sodaweightloss.com. That's SOTA weightloss.com. Soda is, say it with me, state of the art.
Take advantage of Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric's $99 or it's free mainline drain clearing special. That's right, $99 or it's free. Feel secure knowing the trusted professionals at Yes guarantee that if we can't clear it, you don't pay for it. Whether it's a small clog or a larger mainline sewer drain issue, the experienced technicians at Yes are ready to solve all of your drain problems. Call now or visit theyesmancan.com for details, terms, and conditions.
At Trio Senior Living, older adults aren't slowing down. They're just getting started. The Prime Fit Wellness Program expands wellness beyond the gym into every aspect of community life. Whatever your goals, the team at Trio Senior Living has got your back, so you can put your best foot forward. Call 801-475-4004 today to schedule your personal visit.
Seems everything costs more these days. Gas, groceries, and when's the last time you checked your wireless bill? Yikes. When it comes to big wireless, if you're staying, you may be overpaying. Here's how to get the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage without the big wireless bill. Switch to Consumer Cellular. Plans start at just $20 a month, and that's not a short-term promo. Our U.S.-based experts will get you switched and saving in about 20 minutes. Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com and start saving today. Plans include $5 credit for auto pay and e-billing.
Ready to order?
Yes. We're earning unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with a Capital One Saver card, so let's just get one of everything.
Everything?
Fire everything! The Capital One Saver card is at table 27 and they're earning unlimited 3% cash back.
Yes, Chef! This is so nice.
Had a feeling you'd want 3% cash back on dessert.
Ooh, tiramisu!
Earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
On the surface, it seemed like just another Cinderella story.
A team that was predicted to finish dead last is now waiting to play the first round of the playoffs.
But Real Salt Lake's 2021 playoff run was so much more than what happened on the pitch.
Our club is burning to the ground.
This is the tip of the iceberg. Making of a Moment, the RSL story, is available now.
I just kind of got chills right now thinking about it.
Follow us at makingamomentpod.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Federal judges say the number of threats they're receiving is growing day by day, and now the U.S. Marshals Service has issued a warning of those growing threats. It seems to me that there is a more of a focus on federal judges today than there ever has been, and the U.S. Marshals Service is the if you go to a federal court at Morgan, you'll see the Marshal Service is really the security for that. They're telling their judges to be a little bit more careful, and 11 judges were interviewed by Reuters and said that in multiple districts they've had mounting concern over their security, and part of it is the result of some posts by Elon Musk, as you might expect, the world's richest person. He's lambasted judges in more than 30 posts since the end of January on his social media site X, calling them, quote, corrupt, radical, and evil, and deriding the, quote, tyranny and of the judiciary after judges blocked parts of federal downsizing that he has led. I mean, this is something that's, to me, I know we've talked about a lot of things today that I've thought were sort of new, that we haven't dealt with before, but this one is sort of new for me.
So, and I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on this, because you're the attorney, you've worked in this arena, worked in the judiciary. And when I think of threats to judges, I think of like really big issues, like if abortion is a major topic and judges are having to rule on that, if there's a major criminal syndicate, if something that is, I think, what probably comes to mind for most Americans. This is really interesting because really these are very technical cases that we're talking about when we're talking about the size of government, the role of the executive. Yet we are seeing this big response, and I would just love you just to maybe talk a little bit about, just to put that in context for us.
Yeah, so, I mean, we still maintain the three branches of government, and the judiciary can't pass legislation, they can't enact executive orders, they more are reactive, and that puts them in an awkward position because they look at legislation, they can only look at what's before them, and even if they want to, if you say there's some bill or some executive order is unconstitutional, they can't just say act on it. They can only do so when a party brings an action, when there's a lawsuit brought, and the judge has to consider that, or the justice in the court, in the Supreme Court's case, and so I it's hard for me to look at that and say, well, you know, what are these judges doing wrong? They're just reacting to what's before them and trying to do what makes the most sense. And even judges have higher levels. You know, the district court, if we talk about the federal court, you have the federal district court, which every state has at least one. You have the Court of Appeals, that in Utah we're in the 10th Circuit, and then you have the United States Supreme Court. So there are the checks and balances. And by the way, the United States Supreme Court is seen today as largely fairly conservative. I mean, 6 of the justices, I think, were appointed by Republicans, and so ultimately you can't really say they've become liberally sort of nuanced, or that they're different than they have been. But I think there's a notion right now that, like we talked about before, Trump has an agenda, and anyone that stands in the way of that agenda is a problem. And I think Musk is saying, at least give us a chance, at least let us put our agenda forward. But the judges are saying, hey, we still have to follow the law, and if you don't follow the law, we're going to throw over your executive orders.
Yeah, this is really interesting because this is the idea of people pushing back against the judiciary and saying we don't like judges who, quote unquote, legislate from the bench, or we don't like, quote unquote, activist judges. This is not something that's new. It's something we've heard for decades, beyond decades. What is interesting, I think, that a lot of people have noted is that in the past, that kind of language was largely directed at perhaps judges appointed by a certain party.
Sure.
But right now, it doesn't really matter. It's if a judge rules against one of these acts, they are the recipient of that kind of language.
And I think that the public and others are looking at this and going, well, if you don't like what a congressperson does, or if you don't like what the executive does, you can vote them out. But judges are there for life. Federal judges have lifetime tenure. And unlike what we do in the state, where we have those retention elections, should so-and-so, judge so-and-so stay on the bench, which they almost all pass, federal judges don't have that. It's really difficult to get rid of a federal judge. So given that, and I think that's the beauty of it. But to some people, and I say that because it gives them independence. It gives them the ability to make decisions without thinking, how's this decision going to affect me in November at the election? How's this decision going to affect me when I go talk to my constituents? Because they don't do that. So to me, that's the beauty of that third branch. But some people think that it also creates a lack of accountability because there isn't what do you do if you don't like a judge? I mean, it's almost impossible to get them impeached. And in fact, it's just not going to happen. It rarely happens unless they commit a crime, or what we call high crimes and misdemeanors, and then they're eligible to be impeached. But ruling in a way that the prevailing or the majority party doesn't like is hardly a high crime or misdemeanor, as it's been defined by some of these conservatives who are upset at what these judges are doing.
Do you see Congress perhaps acting? We heard discussions while the Democrats were still in power and when Biden was proposing, though nothing really went further than sort of conjecture and rumor, talking about changing or creating terms for Supreme Court justices, making it so the size of the court changed. Now that Republicans are in power and the president and Elon Musk really don't like the way things are going, do you see those conversations coming up?
I don't right now because the Republicans, let's face it, control the judiciary. They control the Supreme Court. So it's not in their best interest because remember, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you pass some legislation saying we need to have more Supreme Court justices or we need to have easier ways to get justices out, you're going to have to eat that same legislation 4 years or 8 years from now.
I love that you said that because I think a lot of people forget. We have all this conversation about getting rid of agencies, creating agencies, doing all these things, and sometimes I wonder if politicians remember the pendulum will swing.
Right, it goes
Are you
back
going
and
to be
forth,
okay
right.
when the other party, and I say this to both parties, are you going to be okay when the next person's in charge?
And whether we like it or not, we'll have a Democratic president again. It maybe not in 4 years, maybe not 8 years, but I mean, it will swing back and forth. I also say this, Morgan, we saw a hit on the judiciary even here in Utah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
That was very troubling to me.
Yeah.
I wrote an editorial about it, just about the power grab, but it's the same thing. A judge will rule on some legislation in our state. It was the legislature that was upset. In our federally, we're talking about the executive branch, the executive orders. But it's the same thing. A judge won't let one of the other branches do what they want to do. They're holding it back and saying, based on the Constitution, based on the law, we can't support that. And the Utah legislature did some things to try to quell that. Now, I think they sort of backed off at the very end, a lot of the bills that they were looking at.
Yeah, just this week they announced a compromise and said, hey, we're going to back off. But it was really interesting also to what we were saying. Some of these judges and justices at the federal level were appointed by Republicans.
Sure.
In Utah, there's no question.
Every judge
was appointed. At this point, Republican governor since 1985, Republican legislature since the late 70s. Every single judge was appointed and confirmed by Republicans.
Yeah, there's no judge that was appointed by Scott Matheson.
Right.
That's still around. That's still on the judiciary.
I guess there maybe could be. It's only 40 years. We'll have to look into it.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I may end up eating those words, but I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, the attack on the judiciary is hard for me to understand. It really is. The fact that judges nationally are having to have the U.S. Marshal Service watch them more closely. I mean, judges don't have their I was going to say their address in the phone book, but we don't have the phone book anymore. But there's this high level of privacy. And by the way, most of the judges that I know took a significant pay cut to be a judge.
Yeah,
they wanted to do public service.
They
wanted to do something. And the federal judges are no exception to that. And my wife works for the federal judiciary, and so she works with these judges all the time. And these are good men and women who are doing the best that they can to support the Constitution and to support what we're doing. And so it's hard to see this happening. I hope it's not something that's going to go further. I hope that we don't have a judge hurt. I hope we don't have a judge attacked. That would be the worst possible thing. So let's hope that we keep this under wraps.
I loved this Greg Skordas soapbox, and I love our American institutions, and with the courts, it's all about the power of the pen. We have we have to respect them.
Hey, it was fun working with you, Morgan.
You
I hope
as
I
well.
get to
This
do
was
that
fun,
again.
Greg.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Maria Shilaos, and this week for Jeff Kaplan, the rain has stopped at least for a minute in downtown Salt Lake City. It's mostly cloudy and 44 degrees. KSL's top story. Some families at Hill Air Force Base are preparing for major disruptions to their child care. The Trump administration's efforts to trim government operations is expected to impact the base's daycare facilities. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera is live with the latest. Eric?
Maria, in a letter obtained by KSL, military families at Hill Air Force Base were warned that staffing shortages because of employees opting for the federal buyouts could force the base to scale back daycare operations. The letter reveals the base may consolidate from 2 daycare centers into just 1 as early as this week, potentially leaving families scrambling for alternatives. Hill Air Force Base spokesperson Kendall Johnson says they haven't gotten the official word to close just yet and don't want to leave families in the wind.
We don't want to just say goodbye and good luck. We're going to try to help them the best they can. And we're also working with leadership to see what other options there might be for potentially affected families.
Reporting live, Eric Cabrera, KSL News Radio.
Utah could be the first state to require app stores to verify the ages of users before they download an app. The bill, sponsored by Senator Todd Weiler, just needs the governor's signature to become law. Weiler says his measure has inspired other states to do something similar.
What this bill will do is it will require the accounts of minors, children, to be tethered to their parents. And they already do this for kids under the age of 13. We're going to require it for kids under the age of 18.
Weiler says parents will now have a say over what their kids downloaded and will have to accept the terms and conditions of those apps. Just 2 signatures now stand between low-income children and free school lunches in Utah. KSL News Radio's Heather Peterson is live with the latest. Heather?
Maria, this bill would make lunches free for those students who are currently getting reduced-price lunches, and this could feed 40,000 Utah children. The bill's sponsor, Representative Tyler Clancy, says there is nearly $3 million in school meal debt every year.
So instead of paying off debt, we want to get to the heart of that issue, where we're not trying to reach parents who can afford their lunch and they're just not paying it. We want to hit those students who are really in need.
Those opposed were concerned about cost and creating government dependency. The latest version of the bill reduced the fiscal note so that now it asks for $2.5 million in the 2026 fiscal year. It now awaits signatures from the Senate president and the governor. Reporting live, Heather Peterson, KSL News Radio.
Our top national story, President Trump has postponed tariffs on some goods from Canada, now in addition to the Mexican tariff pause. This is the second 1-month postponement that the president has announced since first unveiling the import taxes in early February. The reprieve would apply to goods that are compliant with the trade agreement that Mr. Trump negotiated with Canada and Mexico in his first term. Investors are rattled by the unknowns of President Trump's tariffs. A big sell-off on Wall Street over the tariff whiplash. Falling AI stocks sent the NASDAQ down more than 10% below its record. ABC's Michelle Franzen says farmers are also voicing their concerns.
Americans are trying to navigate the uncertainty of tariffs. That includes farmers who plan months in advance to buy and sell. Jack Vesey is a 4th-generation produce grower in California and says farmers can't turn on a dime.
There's certain things that might be a positive for us. There may be some things that might be negatives. Concern on fertilizer price and some of our inputs. If those increase, that's going to put a damper on things. That's going to increase our cost.
Razor-thin margins that could make or break the season's crop. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
A federal judge has denied a request from USAID contractors to block the mass termination of their contracts.
It doesn't mean that we're not going to be doing foreign aid. It's a matter of how are we going to be doing the aid, and if it is effective, and if it is efficient, and if it achieves the goals that we want that make America safe, more prosperous.
State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce says an overall 90-day review of the agency is ongoing as a major overhaul continues. Provo Canyon is a mess this afternoon with the storm moving through.
The road that connects Provo Canyon to Sundance Resort closed this afternoon after 4 cars slid off the road and into a river nearby. A photo from Utah Highway Patrol showed a car flipped over in the river. UHP said they didn't have any reports of serious injuries in the crash. Then a rock slide near Bridal Veil Falls closed the canyon for a short time. Multiple rocks in both the west and eastbound lanes, some as large as cars, were in the road. The rocks were quickly cleared out of the way. Jessica Lowell, KSL News Radio.
You can find photos on our website, kslnewsradio.com. There could be even more messes on the road. Not all of Utah's roads were pre-treated before the snow moves in tonight. KSL News Radio's Heather Kelly explains.
If the brine solution designed to melt snow is applied to the roads while it's still raining, it will wash away. That's why UDOT spokesman John Gleason says they have to monitor temperatures in real time to determine if or when the brine trucks will start working. He says at 33 degrees, no pre-treatment, but at 32 degrees, it will happen.
Gleason expects all the roads above 7,000 feet to be pre-treated. The valley rain is expected to turn to snow overnight. Be sure to tune in to Utah's Morning News to get the very latest on your drive tomorrow morning. KSL News Time, 3:05. Ricky Meese, how's the weather impacting our drive right now?
It has been a little bit crazy out there, hasn't it? A couple of vehicles in a river while 2 others crash. And SR 92, Alpine Scenic Highway in Utah County, that's still the hot spot. It is still closed for about a 3-mile stretch. Both directions are affected, so you need to avoid SR 92 Alpine Scenic Highway right now. If you try to get to it from Highway 189 Provo Canyon, it's all jammed up. In fact, a lot of the delays are sitting on Provo Canyon right now in the center lane. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Coming up on Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News, he must be having a sweet tooth because he has pie on the brain. Jeff Kaplan's Minute of News is next.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. I love to talk about NPS. It indeed is a nice place to save, and they get their inventory. I get asked this all the time. Where does it come from? Overstock, unclaimed, refused shipments from various companies around the country and even around the world. And NPS acquires that and gives you savings of 20 to 70% each and every day. And then on top of that, each of their 4 stores, they'll have in-store deals that save you even more. You get the products that you want at unbelievable prices. And sometimes you'll find things that you weren't even looking for, but you end up absolutely loving. Treasure hunting at its best awaits you at NPS. And of course, you can get your groceries there too at very competitive prices. They're on North State Street in Orem, North Main Street in Layton, and in Salt Lake City, just off Redwood Road.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and it's time once again for our free furnace sale, where you buy a new air conditioner and we give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free. You just pay the labor. And here's the best part. There's up to $5,600 in rebates and tax incentives available right now that can help you stack even more savings on top of this already amazing deal. So if you've been thinking about replacing your old furnace and air conditioner, don't miss this opportunity to offset the cost by using someone else's money. To learn more, all you have to do is contact Any Hour Services and schedule a free estimate. One of our HVAC supervisors will come to your home, show you exactly how much you can save with our free furnace sale, and walk you through how to collect every dollar of rebate incentives your new system qualifies for. We even have a rebate support specialist to help you if you have questions. If you think you might be interested, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7400. Google Any Hour Services or schedule a free estimate online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
KSL News Time, 3:08.
This is My